If you like your Renaissance stories dripping with scandal and your Victorian stories draped with Gothic fog, you are definitely in the right place. Let's do a little bit of time travelling and talk all about my historical fiction favourites. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Carly and today we're going to do a little bit of time travelling. And I'm going to be talking to you all about some of my favourite historical fiction books. Now, this is one of my most requested videos. So many of you have asked for historical fiction recommendations, and I don't know why it's taken me so long to put it together, to be honest, because historical fiction is one of my absolute favourite genres. Now, I haven't made any secret about the fact that I love the Victorian era, so a lot of books in this video are going to be set in the Victorian era. I also love me a bit of Renaissance scandal. I also love anything a little bit witchy, set around witch trials, so I love that era. But I don't want the books in this video to cross over too much with some of my other videos. So if historical fiction is your thing and you're looking for even more recommendations than I'm going to give you today, then definitely check out my witchy video and my Gothic fiction video. I will link both of these videos in the description below for you. Now, I have always been obsessed with history. When I was a kid, I grew up reading the horrible histories books, and I was so obsessed with how gruesome and gory and absolutely savage history is. Like, it's not for the faint of heart, is it? So it's no surprise that I love to read about it in books. Now, even though the books in this video are all fictional books, they are all historical fiction, I do still feel like I learn a lot from these books because more often than not, they are based on true events and real people. And then after I finish them, I always end up falling down rabbit holes and researching these people. So I do actually feel like I have learned a lot from these books, even though they're fictional. And to be honest, I think I'm just going to leave the intro there because, shocking I know, but I've actually got quite a lot of books to talk about in this video. The list is quite big, so I'm just going to crack on and dive straight into the books because I feel like this video is going to be another long one. Starting off with The Resurrectionist by A Rae Dunlap. Now, this is set in the 19th century and it is set in Scotland. It's set in Edinburgh. And one thing you will know about me if you've been with me a while is I love a 19th century setting and I love a Scottish setting. I don't know what it is about Scotland, but it lends itself so well to Gothic historical fiction. I bloody love it. So this follows our main character called James, who goes to Edinburgh to study medicine. Desperate to scrape together the fees he needs in order to pay for his studies, he ends up accidentally falling in with a group of men called the Resurrectionists, who are basically grave robbers. Now, because studies in medicine and anatomy were so popular in this era, there was a high demand for cadavers and that demand couldn't be met. So in comes these resurrectionists, aka grave robbers, who used to rob fresh cadavers out of their graves and sell them on to these professors who wanted to use them for medicine. Honestly, it is as grim as it sounds, but I absolutely bloody love this book. It is so atmospheric. It definitely gives all the Gothic, gruesome vibes. I actually felt like I was there in the graveyard with these resurrectionists. Like, I could feel the soil beneath my feet. Honestly, it was so atmospheric. I bloody loved it. So if you love yourself a bit of dark, Gothic, gruesome, grave robbing, dead body vibes set in Scotland, then I highly recommend you pick this one up. Next up, we have got Eynhallow by Tim McGregor, and this one is set a little bit earlier. This one is set in the 18th century and it is set on the Orkney Islands, which I actually believe is off Scotland. Is it just a little bit further up than Scotland, the Orkney Islands? Please correct me in my comments if I'm wrong. So this basically follows the day-to-day life of our main character called Agnes. She is a mum and a wife, and yeah, it's all about her day-to-day life on the Orkney Islands and kind of like the work they do to support their family. Now, Agnes's husband isn't very nice to her, so you've got that element of the book, but also you have got a stranger that comes to visit the island. He comes to rent one of the abandoned cottages. This stranger is wealthy. He's a bit of a wacky scientist, and his name is Frankenstein. So it's not really a Frankenstein retelling as such. It's just more like a book with Victor Frankenstein in it. Do you know what I mean? Now, what I will say is this book didn't actually go in the direction that I thought it was going to go, but in the best possible way. It is another one that is very atmospheric. It is, oh God, it is just so gothic and delicious. And I absolutely love this one as well. But yeah, it just went in a completely different direction to what I thought it was going to go in. And since I read it, I think I read it a couple of months ago, I haven't stopped thinking about it since. It is absolutely fantastic. Next up is A Fire in Their Hearts by Philip Paris. And it's another one set in Scotland, but this time it is set in the 17th century. So this story basically follows a group of people called the Covenanters, who were kind of like a religious/political group who found themselves targeted by this man called George Mackenzie, who is also known as Bloody Mackenzie. He was a real life person. I've actually visited his mausoleum. I shall insert an overlay for you. And basically this book is all about this small group of Covenanters who have been imprisoned. It's all about the horrific conditions of this prison. Most people who were imprisoned either perished because of the conditions. If they did survive, they were either executed or they were shipped off to, I think it's Barbados, where they were basically treated like slaves. Now, what I will say is this book is very uncomfortable to read in places, so please check any trigger warnings before you go into it. It is absolutely brutal to read. I didn't know anything about the Covenanters before I went into this book. And like I said in the intro, this is a book that I ended up falling down a massive rabbit hole to research when I was reading it, because honestly, I was so interested. I actually did this book on audio, and if this book is on your radar, I actually highly recommend the audio for it. The narrator was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I just really, really enjoyed it, and I cried at the end. And I always think if a book can make you cry, it's a bloody good one. Next up, we have got The Art of a Lie by Laura Shepherd Robinson. This one isn't set in Scotland. This is actually set in London in the 18th century. Now, I went into this book expecting it to be something, and it ended up being something completely different. I'm not going to give away any spoilers. So it follows the story of our main character called Hannah, who owns her own confectionery shop. And what I will say is the descriptions of the confectionery and the desserts that Hannah makes are honestly absolutely bloody delicious. I loved that element of the book. Now, Hannah has recently lost her husband. Her husband has been murdered. And because of a mix-up with probate and his will and everything, she has found herself in real financial difficulty, and she's worried that she's going to end up losing her shop. However, some information comes to light after her husband's death, and Hannah realises that he did actually have more money than she thought he had, but the police believe he acquired this money illegally, so they're keeping a hold on it for now. And pretty much the whole book is Hannah looking into her husband's life and what he got up to and looking into his secrets, basically. This is another one that I did on audio, and another one that I highly recommend the audio for. The narrator was absolutely fantastic, and I really, really loved getting kind of like the internal monologue of Hannah, our main character. I also love that this book talks about the origin of ice cream and where ice cream began and how it was made. Like, honestly, like I said, the food descriptions were absolutely delicious. And yeah, just go into this book open-minded, and I really hope you have the experience with it that I did, because this was such an unexpected hidden gem for me. Next up, we have got one of my absolute favourite, not just historical fiction, but favourite books of all time, The Last Witch by C.J. Cooke. Now, if you have been with me a while, you will know that this is one of my favourite books I read this year. It is absolutely phenomenal. Like, I can't even put into words how much I love this book. So this book is set in 15th century Austria, and it follows the story of our main character called Helena Schuberin, who was actually a real person. It is based on a true story of this woman who found herself on trial for witchcraft and murder, pretty much just because she got on the wrong side of Father Heinrich Kramer. He took a dislike to her, and yeah, next thing you know, she's on trial for witchcraft and murder. Now, Helena is thrown into prison, and she finds herself in prison with 6 other women who are in the same position as her. And oh my God, the torture scenes and the prison scenes in this book are absolutely brutal. They are so uncomfortable to read. So please make sure you go into this book in the right frame of mind, because even the opening scene of this book is absolutely horrendous. You are thrown into the action straight away, literally from page 1. And I don't want to say too much more about the plot because, again, I don't want to spoil anything. I do think it's best if you go into this book as blind as possible. But it's all about this incredibly strong and courageous woman, Helena, and how she was brave enough to stand up to one of the most notorious men in history. Now, for anybody that isn't familiar with Heinrich Kramer, he was the man that wrote Malleus Maleficarum, which ended up being kind of like this handbook and guide that played a massive role in the witch trials of the coming century. So it was essentially like your how to catch a witch, how to tell if a woman is a witch, how to execute a witch, how to torture a witch. Honestly, this book played such a huge part in the witch trials, and yeah, this Heinrich Kramer was the man that actually wrote it. And you know what? I just loved the whole book. I absolutely loved this book from page 1 until the last page. It was an absolute masterpiece. I bloody loved it, and to be honest, if you're not sold after that, I don't know what else I can say. Next up is another one of my faves, The Butcher's Daughter by David Demchuk and Corinne Lee Clark. Now, this is set in Victorian London, and it is the untold story of Mrs. Lovett. Now, if you're not familiar with who Mrs. Lovett is, she was the woman who worked in the bakery below Sweeney Todd, and she used to chop up all the dead bodies and bake them into pies, which is absolutely delightful. So yeah, this book is pretty much the backstory of Mrs. Lovett. It's all about like her early life, and I'll be honest, the first half of the book is very backstory. It's very slow burn, but what I will say when I say slow burn, because sometimes people interpret that as being boring, I wasn't at any time bored while I was reading this book. And I tell you what else I loved about it is there's mixed media throughout. So you've got, let me see if I can find some to show you. So you've got like little newspaper clippings, there's letters, it's all told through all this different mixed media. And I just feel like mixed media just makes books so fun to read. I absolutely love it. It breaks it up, and yeah, I just had a fantastic time. And then it got just past the halfway point, and it was as if a switch just went off, and it was just absolute carnage and gore, and I bloody loved it. Like, the second half is exactly what I went into this book expecting. So if you do start it and you're a little bit like, this wasn't really what I was expecting, I promise you that the investment is worth it for the payoff you get at the end, because yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Loved the direction it went, loved the ending. And it's another book that I haven't stopped thinking about since I read it. I actually rated this book 4 stars. And now it's coming to the end of the year and I'm starting to talk about some of my favourite books. I'm actually so tempted to up this to a 5-star, which I very rarely change my ratings, but I just cannot stop thinking about how much I love this book. Next up, we have got The Whistling by Rebecca Netley, and this is another 19th century setting, and it's another isolated Scottish location. So this book follows the story of Elspeth, who arrives on this isolated Scottish island, where she is to become a nanny to a young girl called Mary. Now, Mary is mute, and she hasn't said a word for months, so Elspeth is hoping that she can bond with Mary, and ultimately not just get her to talk, but to find out why she stopped talking. And you know what? It is just your typical Gothic, creepy house book. There are rumours amongst the locals about what happened to the previous nanny. There's this strange whistling sound at night that Elspeth can hear when she's trying to sleep. There's creepy dolls. Honestly, this book has it all. It's another one that is so atmospheric. I just think any isolated Scottish location lends itself so well to this type of book. And it's another one of my faves. I just loved it. I love me anything with a bit of mystery. I love a creepy doll. I love it when all these creepy unexplained things happen at night and their only source of light is like a little candle that they're like maneuvering throughout the corridors, and you're like, if that candle goes out, they're in big trouble. And this book gave those exact vibes. So if you love those vibes, then I cannot recommend this book enough. Next up, we have got The Mourning Necklace by Kate Foster, and this is another Scottish setting. It is set in 18th century Edinburgh, and I tell you what, when I tell you about what this book is about, and then I tell you that it's based on a true story, it will absolutely blow your mind, because it blew mine anyway. So this book follows the story of Maggie Dixon, who has been sentenced to death for the murder of her child. Now, the sentence is carried out. Maggie is hanged, and her family are beside themselves with grief. They are drowning their sorrows in a tavern, when lo and behold, stood at the tavern door is Maggie herself. And everybody's looking at her thinking, what are you doing? How are you stood there when you were just hanged? It literally says there, bruised and dazed, Maggie has little time for her family's questions. All that matters to her is answering this one. Will they hang her twice? So we start going back in time to what happened running up to this execution. And honestly, it is the most outrageous story. Like I said, it's based on a true story. Maggie Dixon was a real person. She's actually known as Half-Hanged Maggie. There's a pub you can visit in Edinburgh as well. Like, it is actually really well known in Edinburgh. And yeah, I just had such a fun time when I was reading it. It's another one that's very atmospheric. It's another one that I felt like I could feel the cobblestones beneath my feet as I was reading it. Honestly, I love it when books are that vivid and atmospheric to read that you actually feel like you're there with the main characters. And yeah, I just think this book is worth reading just because of how wild it is and the fact that it's based on a true story. Honestly, it will absolutely blow your mind. Next up is another one by the same author, actually. This is The King's Witches by Kate Foster. And there's not actually many witchy books in this video because, like I said, I have done a separate witchy video and I didn't want to cross over too much. So if you're after more witchy recommendations, then definitely check that video out. But this is one of my absolute faves and it's very heavy on the historical fiction. So I thought I would add it into this video. So, shock, it is another one that's set in Edinburgh. It is set in 16th century Edinburgh and it follows the story of Princess Anna of Denmark and her marriage to King James of Scotland. So this is another one that absolutely blew my mind because I didn't know it was actually a thing, but back in those days, so King James almost had like a pretend marriage to Princess Anna of Denmark that lasted a year. So it was kind of like a trial marriage, not a pretend marriage, where they can see if things work out. And if they don't after a year, James can be like, actually, I'm going to marry someone else instead. And do you know what's even more wild? If that happens, then Anna is just left to fend for herself and she's like, well, what do I do now? So you've got that storyline that follows the royals. And then you've also got another storyline that follows a housemaid called Jura who finds herself swept up in amongst all these witchcraft accusations. And she's looking for refuge and shelter. Like, she's found herself in a very precarious situation. Let's just say that. And it's all about how these two stories kind of like intertwine and how they're connected. Again, I don't want to say too much about the plot because I don't want to spoil it. But all I'm going to say, again, without giving away any spoilers, is most of this book was a 4-star read for me. I absolutely loved it. I was having a lovely time. And then the ending of the book and the direction the author took this book catapulted it to a 5-star. The ending, you know when you finish a book and you were like, that ending was absolutely outstanding. Honestly, that is exactly how I felt about the end of this book. And it's another one. I read this months and months and months ago and I still think about it to this day. Like, I can't stop thinking about how fantastic the ending of this book was. So if you love a historical witchy book, then you absolutely need to pick this one up. Next up, we have got Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. And I'm going to absolutely shock you now, but this isn't set in Edinburgh. It's not set in Scotland. It is set in 19th century Iceland. I know, I'm mixing things up a bit now. So this follows the story of Agnes, who has been sentenced to death for the murder of her lover. And instead of going to prison, she ends up being taken in by this family to live out her days until her sentence is carried out. Now, this family don't really want Agnes there, but they haven't got much choice. And the whole book is basically all about the day-to-day lives of this family and how they start getting to know Agnes a little bit better and they start looking into her story and what actually happened. There's also a priest who is trying his absolute damnedest to get Agnes off this death sentence. And that's pretty much the gist of what the book is about. you've just got this race against time because the execution date is getting nearer and nearer. And honestly, I just think this book is so underrated. I never see anybody talk about it. I really liked the different setting, the Icelandic setting. It was very wintry. It's perfect to read this time of year, actually. And I just loved Agnes. I loved finding out more about her as a character and her story. And yeah, it's just another massively underrated fave of mine that I think deserves a lot more hype. Next up, we have got A Poisoner's Tale by Cathryn Kemp, and this one is set in 17th century Rome. This is another one actually that is based on a real life person. So it's based on a woman called Julia Tofana who lived in 17th century Rome, obviously. Now she was part of a group of female poisoners that used to distribute their poison to the downtrodden women of Rome wanting to escape their abusive husbands. Kind of like a secret society of female poisoners. Now this is set during a time of plague, and even though there was a plague at the time, the authorities start noticing that the men of Rome are dropping like flies, and suspicion soon starts to turn towards Julia and this group of women. There's a new pope on the scene as well who is adamant he is going to rid the city of heretics and witches and poisoners. And honestly, this book is so exciting to read. I absolutely loved it. It is dangerous. It is high stakes. Like, these women are being hunted by the authorities, but they're also desperate to help other women who cannot escape these horrible men. Do you know what I mean? Now, what I will say is this is another book with some really uncomfortable scenes in. So again, please make sure you check any trigger warnings before you go into it, because it is quite dark in places. But it is another one that I think is extremely underrated, and another one that I think deserves way more hype. Right, next up, I'm going to talk about two books, and they are more modern historical fiction, but there is absolutely no way I could do a historical fiction video and not talk about these books, because these two are two of my favourite reads this year. We've got The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah, and we've also got The Women by Kristin Hannah. And I do feel like Kristin Hannah is just the queen of writing historical fiction books that absolutely tear your heart out. So this book is set during World War II, and it is all about what life was like living in Paris when the Nazis had occupied Paris. So honestly, this is another one. It's absolutely brutal to read in places. It's about two sisters. It's all about their resilience and the dangers they face, even though these dangers are completely different. Honestly, I don't want to spoil it at all. These two characters, Vianne and Isabel, they have stayed with me long after I finished this book. This is another book that made me cry. I ugly cried at the end of this book. It is absolutely phenomenal. I loved it. But again, please check trigger warnings, because there are some really uncomfortable scenes in it. And then The Women is all about our main character called Frankie, who impulsively signs up to become an army nurse, and she is shipped off to Vietnam during the Vietnam War. So this is set during the Vietnam War in the 1960s, and it's all about what life for Frankie is like during the Vietnam War. You've got like the surgical scenes, the high stakes, dangerous, like war scenes, and that's kind of like the first half of the book. And then the second half of the book is all about what life is like for Frankie when she comes home. And she's expecting this hero's welcome, and what she gets is far from it. And it's kind of all about the forgotten women of war in history and their story type thing. Both of these books I did on audio, and both of them were absolutely outstanding on audio. And I actually really recommend you do them on audio. They are so immersive. The narrators did an absolutely incredible job bringing the stories to life, bringing the characters to life. And yeah, I cried my eyes out at both of these books, so I actually don't have anything more to say about them. Next up, we have got The Arsenic Eater's Wife by Tonya Mitchell, and this is set in 19th century Liverpool, and it's all about a woman who has found herself on trial for the murder of her husband. So this 26-year-old, her name is Constance, she's found herself on trial for poisoning her husband William, but she's arguing her case, saying that William was an arsenic eater. Now, I didn't know this was a thing. This is actually based on a true story again. Apparently, back in those days, men used to, I don't know if women did as well, men used to ingest arsenic willingly for a variety of different reasons that I won't go into, because some of them are a bit naughty. So yeah, she's arguing that, well, he used to do this off his own back, and I kept telling him that he was taking too much and that he had this deathly white pallor about him, and he was looking a bit peaky, do you know what I mean? But because she's a woman, and more often than not, men didn't like to listen to women in that era, she may as well be talking to a wall because nobody is listening to her. So you've got her barrister that's trying to argue her case, and then you've got all of this like web of deception and betrayal and lies that comes to surface. And this is another one that is just so underrated. I don't think I have ever seen anybody talk about this book, and I absolutely loved it. And at the end of the book, you've actually got the author's note, and she talks about the true case that it's based on. And it's actually really sad when you look into that case as well. So yeah, it's another one that I think deserves way more hype. Next up, we have got Costanza by Rachel Blackmore, and I don't think I have ever spoken about this book on my channel. Please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I don't think I have ever spoken about this book. And it's one of my faves. I absolutely love this book. So it's set in 17th century Rome again, and it's about our main character called Costanza. She is a respectable wife, that is, until she comes into contact with this famous sculptor called Gian Lorenzo Bernini. Now, as soon as they set eyes on each other, this fatal attraction is born. Like, Costanza is married, so she shouldn't be having eyes for anybody else, but she can't help herself. Bernini also can't help himself, and to cut a very long story short, they end up taking part in some extramarital activities, let's just say. Now, this secret affair absolutely consumes them. It's all they can think about. And being a sculptor, Bernini actually wants to make Costanza immortal by sculpting her. And basically their secret love affair is revealed when Bernini reveals this marble sculpture that he has done of Costanza, and everyone's like, well, that's a bit suspicious. And that is the beginning of this massive scandal. Bernini would rather destroy Costanza than let her go. And honestly, I don't think I am doing this book justice at all. And it's a book I had on my NetGalley shelf for ages and ages. And I kept putting it off because I think I impulsively requested it. And then I got sent it and I was like, I don't really think I'm in the mood for this, to be honest. But once I read it, I was so mad at myself that I hadn't picked it up sooner. I was invested from the very first page. I was hooked. I was invested in Costanza's story. I was swept up in their love affair. I was obsessed with all the scandal. I just loved everything about this book. I loved the setting. It's another one that was very atmospheric. I could imagine myself in Rome, all the food descriptions and the descriptions of the buildings. Honestly, I absolutely loved it. And it's another one I don't see anybody talk about ever. Like, I read it last year and I don't know why I haven't spoken about it sooner on my channel, to be honest, because it's one of my faves and I bloody loved it. Next up, we have got The Tower by Flora Carr, and this book is all about the time that Mary, Queen of Scots, spent in the Tower in the years leading up to her execution. So the setting is very isolated. It's another one that's really atmospheric, actually, because it's all set in this one room in the Tower, and it's all about the day-to-day lives of Mary, Queen of Scots and her ladies' maids. Now, one thing about me that I have said a few times on this channel is I am obsessed with the Tudor era. Anything to do with the Tudors, I absolutely love it. Like, I am a proper Tudor nerd. So I think if you are as well, you will really enjoy this one. It is another one that I did on audio that I highly recommend the audio for. I think the narrator did a fantastic job of bringing Mary's character to life and just, I don't know, like setting the scene and giving us a little bit of a glimpse into what life may have been like for Mary in that tower. Even though it's based on a true story and we all know how things ended for Mary, as a reader, you get to know her, and even though it's ridiculous, you secretly hope that she'll find a way out of the tower and that she'll escape and that she'll live happily ever after. But obviously, we know that that didn't happen, because for that to happen, we'd have to change history, wouldn't we? This is another one of my faves and another one that I highly recommend if you too are a Tudor nerd. Next up, we have got The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner, and this one is set in 18th century London. So you've actually got a dual timeline. So you've got an 18th century London timeline, and then you've also got a present day London timeline. Now, in the 18th century timeline, it's all about our main character. Her name is Nella, and she owns an apothecary. And it kind of gives a similar vibe to A Poisonous Tale in the sense that Nella makes her own poisons and she secretly distributes them to downtrodden women of London wanting to escape any situations they find themselves in that they want to escape, you know? And then something happens that jeopardizes the future of the apothecary and it all becomes very dangerous. Then you've got a present day storyline which follows Caroline, who ends up stumbling across this little apothecary jar, I think, which leads her to start looking into these unsolved apothecary murders. She falls down a rabbit hole and she starts investigating them, basically. And it's all about how these two stories connect to each other, how they intertwine. Honestly, I was so invested, especially in, I mean, we all know I love a historical timeline, but I was so invested in Caroline's storyline when she was looking for the apothecary and she was trying to find out all about Nella and her apothecary and what happened, like with these murders and everything. It's full of suspense. I was hooked the whole way through, and it's another one of my absolute faves that I don't see anybody talk about. Oh, I love it. It says at the bottom of the blurb, with cracking suspense, unforgettable characters and searing insight, The Lost Apothecary is a subversive and intoxicating debut novel of secrets, vengeance, and the remarkable ways women can save each other despite the barriers of time. Oh, I love it. Next up, we have got The Asylum by Karen Coles, and this is set in the early 1900s, and it follows a story of our main character called Maud, who has been in this lunatic asylum for the past 5 years, but she has no idea why she's there. She can't remember. She's lost her memory. And there's a new doctor there trying out hypnosis on her to try and retrieve these memories to find out what happened to her and why she's found herself in this asylum. And it says there, but as Dr. Dimmond delves deeper into the past, it becomes clear that confinement and high doses are there to keep her silent. So once he starts hypnotizing her, she starts getting flashbacks of these memories and starts piecing together her past and what happened to her and how she ended up at the asylum. And I absolutely love this in books. I love it when you have got memory loss and then these memories slowly start coming back. I bloody loved Maud's character. I'm not going to tell you why because I don't want to spoil the book, but I just absolutely loved her as a character. I loved where the story went. And yeah, it's another one of my absolute faves that, in my opinion, deserves way more recognition. Right, we got 2 more. We're nearly there. Next up, we have got The Hanging of Hettie Gale by Tess Burnett, and this book is actually set in the 1700s. It follows the story of our main character called Hettie, who has escaped her very abusive father and set up a new life for herself and her son on the moors. Now, one evening, Hettie is assaulted by a group of men who lie about this assault. And to cut a very long story short, Hettie ends up on trial for a crime that she didn't commit. So you've got that historical storyline. And then you've got a present day storyline, which is all about Alice, whose cousin has gone missing. Her cousin actually lived in this cottage on the same moor where Hettie used to live. And it's all about where her cousin has gone and how her disappearance may be linked to Hettie. So in the present day storyline, Alice becomes obsessed with the legend of Hettie Gale and she starts looking into the history of it. And it's another one that I just absolutely bloody loved. Again, I've never seen anybody else talk about this book. In my opinion, it is absolutely fantastic. I loved how the 2 separate storylines were connected and how they came together. I think I've said this about a few of the books in this video, but I love a dual timeline. I absolutely love it, especially when they start picking apart these stories and then connecting them all together. I absolutely love it. I loved Hettie's story. It is very, very sad. Again, there are some really uncomfortable scenes in this book, so do go into it with caution. But yeah, if you love the sound of it and you love kind of like ghosty mystery vibes, then you absolutely need to pick this one up. And last but definitely not least, we have got By Any Other Name by Jodi Picoult, and this is another one of my absolute favourite books. that blew me away. Now, this book is all about the idea that maybe William Shakespeare wasn't actually the one that wrote all of his plays, and instead maybe some of them were written by a woman behind the scenes. So you've got a historical timeline set during the time of William Shakespeare, all about this woman who was writing plays and who knew Shakespeare. And it kind of sparks the idea that maybe she actually wrote some of his plays. And then you've got a present day storyline, which also follows a female playwright. And it's all about her trying to get one of her plays on stage in a very male dominated industry. And again, we've got this dual timeline element that basically follows two women that, even though they're separated by centuries, are essentially living out exactly the same life. They are both writing plays. They are both intimidated by this male-dominated industry. They are both struggling to get their voice heard. And to be honest, I don't think anything I say can do this book justice. It is an absolute masterpiece. This was my first ever Jodi Picoult book, and it is quite a long book. It is, I don't know, what is it, like just over 500 pages. As somebody that much prefers a shorter book, there wasn't any point in this book where it felt like a 500-page book. I absolutely raced through it. I was addicted to both storylines. I was so invested in both our main characters, and just the concept of it is very thought-provoking. That's all I'm going to say. I love a book that makes me think, and this book definitely made me think. It's another one I read last year, actually. And to this day, I still randomly sit there and think, I wonder if William Shakespeare did actually write all of his plays. And yeah, that brings me to the end of my historical fiction favourites video. I really, really hope you've enjoyed watching this video. I know historical fiction isn't the most popular genre. I know that a lot of people love their thrillers and their fantasies and their horrors and everything. And I do feel like historical fiction doesn't get the hype that it definitely deserves. I love anything historical, anything Gothic, anything scandalous, anything a little bit spooky, anything to do with the Tudors. Honestly, I absolutely love them. So if anybody does have any recommendations for me along the same lines as the books that I've spoken about in this video, please let me know in the comments, because I'm always looking for new historical fiction books to read. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed watching, and I hope it's given you some inspiration for your own reading list. Let me know if you'll be adding any of these to your TBRs. Honestly, I could talk about these books all day long. I absolutely loved every single one of them. So I'd love to hear about what you think of them when you do decide to pick them up. If you did enjoy watching, please don't forget to hit that little subscribe button below. I would absolutely love it if you decided to stick around and follow for so many more book recommendations. I've got lots of end of year favourites videos planned. I've got some reading vlogs. I've got a little book shopping trip coming at the end of this week as well. And I'd love it if you decided to join me for that. And yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Happy reading, and I'll catch you all next time.